From the Cross Country Mortgage Campus in Berea, Ohio, this is Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Interesting next couple of days for the Browns. A lot of rumors out there at the receiver stuff. McCole Hardman going to the Jets. We'll see where it all shakes out. Z, good job to you.
Thank you, man. What a pleasure. What a treat to be on. And keep your eyes. I think that the Browns are certainly still in the mix at the wide receiver position, and I think the Jets have become a very interesting potential partner for them.
There you
with
go.
The signing
of
McCole Hardman.
There you go. You heard it here. Pay attention, kids.
Here are your hosts, Bo Bishop and Nathan Zagura.
You guys ready?
Yep.
You were up.
All right, let's do it live on a Thursday edition. You miss a little, miss a lot. End of the show yesterday, that exchange. The dots just started to line up for Elijah Moore. It's a name that we've been bandying about for months now. As soon as it came to the idea of this was something that was going to be necessary in our view for the Browns to go from a team that could go out and take the field and, top 10 offense last year with Jacoby Brissett. But the difference between that and beating Kansas City was always going to be more weapons. There were minimum requirements that this team had to do in order to be in the conversation, and all of those things were on the defensive line. The next thing they had to do was they had to get weapons, and that's what Elijah Moore was about. We've talked about him for months. We had talked about certainly the Jerry Jeudy trades as being possible as well. We had talked about at 42, the options there. One of the things we were very strong about is it was hard to imagine that the Browns would go into the draft in need of something, that they would want to solve the issues beforehand. And yesterday at the end of the show, as we alluded to, and then eventually it became true within an hour or so, Elijah Moore is a Cleveland Brown now, and he checks the last box that was needed, Z.
No doubt about it. And, yeah, pay attention to the scores is, not to toot our own horns, but toot
them. The ball's not going to spike itself, as a friend of ours once said.
Toot. Yeah, you needed to get that speed receiver, 4.3 40 guy, explosive, 9 touchdowns in 2 seasons with really no quarterback play to speak of. With the Jets, somebody who was dominant at Ole Miss in the SEC, playing against the very best competition. And so this feels like a big win for the Cleveland Browns in the sense that when you look at the modern trade chart, the move from 42 to 74, this wasn't you gave up a pick for a player. You swapped a pick. So you still get to pick a player. And by the way, if MJ Emerson were a second-round pick last year, everybody would be very happy with that. So you have to rely on your ability to hit in the third round. But it really the equivalent of what you gave up, the discrepancy in those picks, the 32 spots, is equivalent to a pick in the middle of the 4th round. So if you had said, hey, we're going to get Elijah Moore for 2 years on a rookie deal where we're going to pay him under $2 million each of the next 2 seasons, you would say that's a huge win. Not only that, it allows you the flexibility that a Jerry Jeudy wouldn't have allowed you. You would have given up more for Jerry Jeudy, frankly, but it gives you the flexibility that Amari Cooper, this isn't necessary. Like if you trade for Jeudy, this would have been Amari's last year with the Browns.
Correct.
That's not true anymore. And so now you've given yourself that weapon. You've given yourself that speed guy. I can tell you from talking to Kevin Stefanski last night, which I did, he is very excited. Alex Van Pelt is very excited. And Elijah Moore, who I spoke with earlier today, is also very excited about this. And so you now have you're set on both sides of the ball to roll out a lineup. So when you go into the draft, to your point, you're not forced to do anything. Now, if you could find a big defensive tackle in there, I'm going to throw out a position that we haven't talked about before, but I think we should now. It would not at all shock me if we took a running back in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I mentioned that this morning as one that would make a lot of sense too. I think you want to probably need a bunch of at-bats on the defensive line, and then I agree with you. I think running back is the next one. But just from the perspective, you hit on something that I think is really important with the difference between Jeudy and Moore, and certainly Jeudy is more proven. I mean, that goes without saying. Moore has very, very high upside as well. Just so he's just about ready to turn 23 years of age. In fact, 4 days from now, he turns 23. So you're getting a very young player, still very much in the prime of his career, who was a 2nd-round pick out of Ole Miss in an offense that was very good, played in the best conference in all of college football in the Southwestern Conference. So he is a high production guy. It did not work for him in New York. A lot of that had to do with the quarterbacks throwing him the ball. And there is a belief, and we've mentioned this many, many times, that they've liked Elijah Moore for a long time around here.
It's a fact.
That's fact. So there's been a lot of boxes that he checked before all of this started to come about. And the pivot, I think, from the pursuit of Mecole Hardman to, hey, if you're going to get Hardman, we would sure like more, and they've probably been asking about more for a long time. Those things now all started to align, and now you check that final box.
So in the last year at Ole Miss, which was 2020, which was the COVID season, I didn't have it wrong. I had it wrong. He didn't have 100 catches, but in 8 games, he had 86 catches, 1,193 yards, and 8 touchdowns in the SEC. He led the nation, I think, in catches and yards per game. I knew that he led that in one of those. Dane Brugler, absolutely loved him. A lot of people loved him coming out in that draft. If he had fallen to where the Browns were able to pick in the second round, the Browns would have taken him. There's no doubt in my mind about that. He was a favorite, and now 2 years later, they're able to go out there and to get that and to get it done. But I wanted to just kind of dive into one thing real quick here on Elijah Moore, because you look at the numbers and you say to yourself, well, okay, he obviously was playing some tough quarterback situations there. But I want to go back to his rookie year. There was a stretch where it finally started to click for him, and this is what he did. These are his final 6 games of his rookie season. 6 for 67, 7 for 84 and 2 touchdowns, 3 for 44 and a touchdown, 8 for 141 and a touchdown, 4 for 46, 6 for 77 and a touchdown, and then he hurt his quad. So he had a 6-game stretch there where he's given you, let's see, that's 13, 16, 24, 34 catches in 6 games. So almost 6 catches a game. He's giving you about 80 yards a game, and he scored 5 touchdowns in 6 games.
Yep.
So this is somebody who got it going in that rookie season and showed the ability to be short, catch and run, the ability to beat man coverage with his breaks in and out, man who showed the ability to go vertical and make big plays down the field. And so he is exactly what we were looking for. And I think once it all came together yesterday and you could connect the dots pretty quickly, that there's no way the Jets were keeping all the people that they had.
Yeah.
That Elijah Moore made a lot of sense for the Browns. I can tell you Deshaun Watson is pumped. I can tell you that Elijah Moore is pumped. Everybody in this building is excited. I'll go back to a conversation I had, and I told this at the event we did last night, a Meet the Coaches event down at the stadium. The day of day 2 of the draft, the night of day 2 of the draft in 2021. So it was still it was a COVID draft. It was a virtual thing. I remember Kevin Stefanski was eating outside. It was a very nice day. It was a beautiful April evening, and I grabbed my plate and sat down with him, and we were talking about the draft, and I was like, I want Elijah Moore. I was like, please give me Elijah Moore today. He goes, and he laughed, and he goes, we would all like that. He goes, I don't think that it's going to be possible. He goes, you and my dad, though, should get together, because Elijah Moore was his dad's favorite player in the draft.
As well, yeah.
So I joked with him last night. I said, well, your dad finally got his guy. And he said, yes, his dad is also quite pleased with Elijah Moore now being a Cleveland Brown. But he's like, my dad loves all SEC receivers, to be fair. But he really did. He did like Elijah Moore. But
a couple of things really quick on that, because you went all the way back to the draft. One thing I always like to do is, how do you do? I do this when I do the Heisman. Like, I want to know how you are against the 5 best teams you played.
Yep.
And I throw out the rest of the games, because everybody plays garbage games, but everybody in the country plays 5 really good games typically. And so I do that with the draft. I want to know how you did against the best. It's not always an absolute, yes, you do this,
sure,
and it translates. For example, I thought David Bell's transition to the pros would be much easier than it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but I still think that there's a chance for him based on some of the stuff. But this was Elijah Moore, his final year at Ole Miss, against the best teams he played. So against Florida, 10 catches, 227 yards.
That's right.
Against Alabama,
That's
11
right.
catches, 143 yards.
Yep.
Against Mississippi State, the rivalry in the Egg Bowl, 12 catches, 139 yards. Against Arkansas, 11 catches, 113 yards. I mean,
I don't know what Vandy and South Carolina are doing, but
Vandy's trash, but
South
Carolina's pretty trash too. But so I didn't want to go. Those were nuts games.
Yeah.
But when you do what he did against Bama,
yep,
11-143 against Bama, that Alabama team in 2020, that's Judy, Ruggs, that's all of them.
Yep,
all those guys. And to go 11-143 against that Bama defense, that tells you that he can get it and get separation against the very best programs in the country. If you're curious, yes, those 2 games against Vanderbilt and South Carolina, 14-238, 13-225 against South Carolina.
5 touchdowns as well.
Yeah, but those 2 teams were down. So
no doubt.
But the rest of those aren't. The only really dud he had his last year was a 5 for 16 against Auburn. That was it. Everything else was a double-digit catch. It was 100 yards or in fact, many instances, much, much more.
Yep.
So that's what you love to see. And we're excited about it because it's he's going to have to do it at the pro level. He knows that. We talked about, you talked about his rookie year. He had that stretch. I love the idea, and I know that how much Andrew Barry loves the idea of going into the draft, if you can, with one of two things as your plan. And, of course, contingency upon contingency. But either the Jed Wills year, we are going to get a left tackle. It's just a matter of which one. So we're getting one. Like, that's part of the plan.
Yep.
The Newsome year felt like we're getting a corner.
Yep.
Like that felt like
we were getting Greg
a
Newsome.
corner, and it felt like we were getting Greg Newsome.
Yep.
So this year, to sit there at 42 and have legitimate needs, we were very confident that they were not going to go into that draft without every offseason box checked, and they did that. They are no longer in a position going into the draft of, and by the way, they're not keeping all these picks. There's no way. There's just no chance. But they're now able to go into the draft and say, we can draft the best player rated on our board without having to say, good Lord, we've got to force a receiver here because we don't have enough weapons. They have somebody that they believe in now as a weapon, and now you don't have to do that. Doesn't mean it would prevent you. Somebody falls to 42 who you love, you take them at receiver. More weapons, all the better. But now it allows you to be much more nimble in the draft as opposed to pigeonholed. And they were never going to go into a draft pigeonholed.
Yes, you have totally the ability to be nimble. You have the ability to go in a variety of directions. You're exactly right. And to get a player that you liked in this building as much as you did with Elijah Moore, who has some NFL tape that is impressive. There were a lot of things that were very frustrating for Elijah Moore, and I think that he's learned, from that frustration, but this is a new lease on life. He knew, by the way, grew up in the same area as Amari Cooper, has a great relationship with Amari Cooper, somebody who he's admired for a long time. He's excited to play with. He's known Deshaun out in L.A. I guess they've trained together, so he's very excited about that.
MJ had to cover him in the Egg Bowl, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. He knows MJ. He knows
all the LSU guys.
All the
LSU
LSU guys he was talking
against.
about. Yeah, Grant and Jacob. And
we have so many SEC guys.
Yeah. So he's very comfortable here. But your point is very well received that we could roll out exactly what we have right now. And so now it's about finding things that, could be a luxury. And, again, don't forget, now we could roll this money forward, but we're going to get $10 million after June 1st. For people who are wanting a big, veteran name on the D-line, if that's going to happen, my guess is that happens after June 1st because we're carrying that $10 million on our cap now, but then it will be freed up June 1st. And, you get a veteran I'm not that interested in OTAs or anything like that, but you'd get him in here in time for training camp. I think that's when something like that would happen. But you're in a very, very good spot now. Elijah Moore does have real speed. And, you think about trying to defend us now with his speed. You're going to be worried about, obviously, Nick Chubb. You're going to be worried about Amari. You're going to be worried about the Chief. You should be worried about DPJ, Elijah Moore. And then there's Deshaun Watson, who's the trigger man. And, Jim Schwartz said something very interesting last night as somebody, he's gone against Deshaun Watson. And when you have a quarterback like that, you never feel as a defense coordinator that you can ever just come up with the perfect scheme it doesn't matter. It's about you've got to call the right plays and then they've got to be executed. And even then it still might not matter. And that's the tough part about quarterbacks who are special like Deshaun Watson is from that regard. And so now to give him these weapons, I mean, this is a big Elijah Moore, had he gone into a different situation, would never have been available. And I think the Browns did something highly intelligent in this. The Jets were supposedly only looking for a third-round pick for Elijah Moore. By offering them a second-round pick and getting a third back, they can say, oh, well, we got a second-round pick for Elijah Moore. You actually gave them a 4. And so –
yeah, from the draft, yeah.
And I think that don't be surprised if that, too, is then used to get Aaron Rodgers. So I think the Browns took advantage of their focus on that to actually get a cheaper price tag and get a player that they coveted. And if Elijah Moore went to a different place, if Elijah Moore went to a place with one of these good quarterbacks, like let's say he ended up with the Chargers, he's not available.
Oh, no.
At all.
No.
Period.
No. And he's going to be hungry, man. Like he knows what's said about him. He knows, this opportunity that's ahead of him. So it's an exciting time. It's a time where, from our position now, you roll out a 2 deep in all 22, special teams. You can now run that out there, and you have a team that you feel like can compete. This was the last thing that was needed. It was critical. And if you didn't think it was, I mean, God, we talked about it all the time. You didn't think it was critical. All you need for proof the other way is what they did to make sure they get a guy like this.
Yep.
Like they were doggedly pursuing these type of people. They were in on Jerry Jeudy. They were in on Mecole Hardman. They knew they needed another weapon. They get one in Elijah Moore. Doesn't mean they're done either. You're out. You can be opportunistic now at this point. If something pops, you can go make a move for it. I like your point on the deep veteran defensive end down the line. That could be something as you get more closer to camp. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
I think that, and I think that, if you're the Browns right now, when you're in this draft, you're looking, and you could probably get pretty good value at running back in the third round, another defensive tackle in the third round, a slot corner in the third, like a true slot nickel in the third round to allow you kind of to prepare for a variety of things on the back end, and knowing that there is going to be an injury there at some point. I just think that you really, really are in a great spot. Getting Elijah Moore just kind of lets you exhale. It kind of deflates the bubble a little bit. This is a team right now that's flying under the radar. You're starting to see everybody around praise what we've done this offseason and how judiciously it was done, how fiscally responsibly it was done. Mm-hmm. So you've got a team right now that still has some ammo on the salary cap side of it. You have a team that rolling forward some cap money is going to be very valuable because of it's inevitable. Like you've got to pay the Deshaun Watson bill at some point.
Yep.
Now you can restructure again next year and keep kicking it down the can, but he is going to get paid, and that is going to impact what you are able to do. So I think, to get a guy that's, I think, making 1.4 and then 1.8 in Elijah Moore who can actually make a difference this year, like he is, it's your point, is young. We now have a pretty young wide receiver room. It takes a lot of pressure off of David Bell in terms of his development, but could still end up being, as this thing evolves, David Bell could still end up being a nice slot piece for the Browns down the road. But now you don't need to worry about that. This receiving room is so interesting now with Amari, Donovan, Elijah Moore, David Bell. Those are your top four. My guess is, Jakeem Grant makes it as your returner if he's back from his injury, right?
Sure.
And that's 5, and you might only roll with 5. Could keep 6. I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be tough. Anthony Schwartz was so good on special teams last year. Like, if you're Anthony Schwartz right now, your calling card to make this football team is special teams, period, full stop.
Yeah, that's it. That's where that competition will be. In terms of what it means for us in the draft, as of now, and we're never going to keep all these picks. There just aren't enough spots for it all. 2/3, 73rd, and 98. Then 2/4, 111 and 126. 2/5, 142, 144. A 6th at 190, and a 7th at 231.
Yeah, don't be surprised if we either try to take a couple of picks to move up and turn 2 picks into 1 player. If we divest some of these picks this year into next year at, the round benefit that you get out of that. And so I think the idea that we're going to select 8 players and there aren't 8 roster spots.
No.
I mean, one of the things we should do, and I know we have on here, is to go through the position groups right now, but like I'm going to show you could do a pretty legit 53 like today.
And I think that's what they wanted to be able to be in, is the position to be able to do that. You did not want to go into the draft saying we have to get a guy, a weapon at 42 who can help us now. That's the last thing they wanted to be in. That's not a position for success. And this allows for that not to be the case. We will rank the position groups. Z will go one-on-one with Elijah Moore. You have that to look forward to, which is very nice. Rich Cimini going to join us in the 2 o'clock hour, of course, covering the Jets, get his take on Elijah Moore, get his take also on where they stand with the Rodgers situation. Josh Dobbs will join us in studio in the second hour as well. You listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, coming soon to Ohio on 850 ESPN Cleveland. It is lovely out there today. I mean, just gorgeous.
Absolute beaut.
Isn't it something?
It's a beaut.
Really
It's
is.
a beaut, Clark.
Buddy Garrity doesn't hate much in life. He likes most things. He'll do about anything. He'll eat anything. He'll go about anywhere that I want him to go at any time, regardless of circumstances. That was a real heart-to-heart he and I had this morning before the walk, and really, quite frankly, during. I basically pulled him for a mile is what it amounted to. He hated every second of it.
He wanted no part of it.
No part of it. And you're in it. Like, you've got tomorrow's going to be cool. Then it's just going to rain Saturday, 65 and just rain. And then next week is honestly pure trash too. And I mean, all the way out, there isn't a day. There's not a 70 anywhere.
It goes. It's high, low.